Seeking Aid. When we landed a full day's flight away from Mistmantle Manor, I wondered if something was wrong. Caden had been brooding, ruminating, or something since the dinner Lord Mistmantle had provided us. At first I thought it was the topic of conversation we had near enough ended on. The sons of Lothar were alive and well beyond the dark portal, I knew, but that was hardly something I could tell him. It was still many years away. It was an outrageous claim, and as much as it might bring hope, it could too easily be seen as a cruel taunt or mockery. If I lived so long as to see the dark portal reopened again, I would spill what I knew. Or maybe even sooner, since there were clear ways to reach the blasted remains of Draenor if Illidan, Vash and Kael had managed it, but not until there was a purpose behind it. For the moment, I rested against Featherstone, watching the sunset. There was a gentle breeze, almost curious, drifting across the hill we had stopped on. Might be a chill tonight, I said, hoping I might prompt Caden out of his brooding. Cold wind of Alterac. Caden kept staring out at the horizon for a time. Lass, what would you have done if you hadn't met me? Walked, I said, unbothered by the change in subject. Kiel Harbour to Peerwood is a couple of months, but I'd have walked it all the same. No road through a march is a safe one, he grumbled, and Featherstorm agreed with a soft warbling cry. And we've both seen the woods behind us ain't so safe neither. You've magic true, but that's not enough. My arm went to my side where a gnoll had struck me. There was no sign of injury, not even a phantom twinge. I'd healed it perfectly, but... yeah, I found that out. Most of my training was with a spear or staff, but did I even bother carrying one? No, thanks to stupid overconfidence. Wasn't as prepared as I thought I was. Probably could have made it, probably still could from here. Joining a merchant caravan heading out of the capital and north towards Dalaran would slow me down, but would have been a better choice. Not that I would have thought of that 2 weeks ago. You're 12, lass, Caden said, turning to stare at me. But you didn't care how young you are, do you? I'm glad I found you, lass. Too many good lads and lasses die afore their prime, taken by foolishness. There wasn't much I could really say to that. Slowly the stars came out and the breeze grew colder. For a little while I thought about asking the wind to divert, to leave us warmer, but there was no real reason to. Even if it did listen to me, we didn't need it to. We had warm blankets aplenty, and it seemed busy as it whispered of things from afar. I couldn't hear it properly, not clearly enough for it to make sense, but that night I dreamt of free skies and joyful laughter playing over mountain valleys. A nice break from nightmares of bloody axes and mocking growls. We saw Silverlane Keep long before we spotted Peerwood Village. For all that it was called a village, it wasn't a small settlement, at least not by the scales of Azeroth. Several thousand people had to call the town clustering at the cliff below the mighty citadel home. In a break from the immensity of the largely untamed wilderness that had covered so much of our trip, Peerwood was surrounded by well-cultivated fields and smaller villages of perhaps a few dozen to 100 people each. It was the first sign of civilization that had been obvious since we had started to fly over the Peerwood marches. The empty wetland left barren and untended by Galeas for reasons I didn't honestly know. Easier living elsewhere, too many monsters. There were dozens of possible reasons. Seeing the edifice that might one day become Shadowfang Keep before it was ruined was strange. The walls were in good condition, the towers standing proud, and even from the air it was clear the fortress was manned and full of life. A stark contrast that set itself in my mind. Would warning people be able to stop the tragedy that happened here? They held out. They survived the scourge. It was the Worgen that got them in the end, turning the people of Peerwood and damning the citadel to be a home to little more than mad beasts and haunting specters. And seeing it, not just a shoddy and low-resolution representation of it, I could see how it survived that long. It put the Mistmantle's Northglade castle to shame. More than triple the size and built over a sheer cliff against the mountainside. Only one entrance route, across a deep chasm controlled by the drawbridge. Mindless undead wouldn't have breached that until the chasm was filled with corpses, which was unlikely to happen with the river running through the gully. Not only did it appear near impenetrable to a conventional frontal assault, it was big enough to house the population of the surrounding town and villages, a refuge in case of invasion. The Grand Keep built into the cliffside alone was the size of Northglade Castle, and if there were tunnels dug into the mountain, it could be far, far larger. Just how many had holed up in that fortress, waiting for aid from Gilneas that would never come? How many of our people had Gen Greymane condemned to death or the curse in his arrogant stubbornness? I didn't know, and I certainly didn't want to see it happen. Beyond the keep, the imposing mountains of Elim loomed. Nothing on the truly immense Alterac mountains we had moved into chasing the gnolls, but still lofty peaks that towered over the keep. There were only two real ways through them, to Dalaran and Lordomere Lake or the Elim Vale, with neither side wishing to march armies within fireball range of the towers of Dalaran. That vale, which Silverlane Keep stood to guard, was where Lordaeron and Gilneas had fought most of our battles in history. Before the Alliance, there had not been peace. I'd not really had a chance to properly study our history, and I still knew a dozen wars between Gilneas and the other kingdoms as it was, mostly Lordaeron. As Featherstone turned into land, a lazy and slow glide past the keep and down towards the village, the guardsmen on the wall started hurrying about. I took a moment to wave, though we were below the parapets before I could see if anyone waved back. There wasn't any indication they sounded the alarm, which was good. With my feet on the ground of the first of the two destinations I had set for myself, my stomach felt like it was spinning around, twisting itself into knots. What if Mother wasn't here? What if she had lied? What if she went somewhere else? Get a move on, lass. You won't find her by standing around, Caden said, giving me a shove. Right, I mumbled. The first obvious stop was the pub, the prime place for gossip in any town. And like any good town, Peerwood had several, enough that near every adult in the village could find a place to sit and drink in the evenings if they wanted. With only a moment's hesitation, I marched into the first one I saw, Caden ambling along behind me. I was young enough to draw stares, my height and youthful face giving away that I was out of place here. To be sure, the barkeep's own kids likely ran around doing chores, or got underfoot, but they'd be known. Not only was it strange for a child to be here, I was an outsider too. Normally someone like me would have gone to the coaching inn, but traveler's gossip wasn't what I was after. Striding up to the counter, I locked eyes with the barkeep. Hi, I said, my tongue feeling awkwardly heavy. I'm looking for someone. My mother. She was supposed to have come to Peerwood, Irwin Arevin. The barkeep raised an eyebrow as he looked at me. Can't say I know the name, he mumbled before glancing at one of his patrons and shrugging his shoulders. You have any Thundermart around here? Caden said behind me. Could do with a drink. Been a wee bit of a trip escorting the lads this far north. No Thundermart, but I think there's some Airy Peak Pale. Haven't tapped the cask yet, he replied, though he started moving as soon as Caden dropped a few silver coins on the counter. Hey Jones, you keep out folk. Ever heard of an Irwin Arevin? He called out, a dark-haired man perking up at his name. Who's asking? Paying customer, that's who. Jones snorted, eyeing us. Nah, no leads of that name come by the last few years. Couple of Arevins, Roderick, Masters, and Cassie, were headed north to Brill to meet family. Think there was an Irwin, but she was a little girl, younger than that one. He waved his mug at me. The barkeep looked at me and shrugged again. You heard him. Caden's heavy hand fell on my shoulder as I drooped. I'd hardly expected it to be that easy, but I'd hoped. "We'll check the next ones too," he said reassuringly. We stayed long enough for Caden to finish his flagon before moving on, taking a moment to check on Featherstorm at the edge of the town before going to the next pub. The story repeated. No one recognized the name. Saying I was Erwin's daughter and if anyone had seen someone who looked like me got us nowhere. As Caden slowly got drunker, enjoying his time in the pubs, I started feeling more distressed. Sure, there was still Ambermill, but I'd really thought it would be here. I barely slept that night. The thoughts of what might have happened to Mama traveling the dangerous roads through the marshes on her own running through my head. Had she run into gnolls like the one that had hit Turn's clearing? What about trolls? I knew there was a clan that thought of the river Aravas as their own. My mother couldn't fight. She didn't have the magic, didn't have the training. She avoided trouble by staying out of its way or knowing when she needed to leave, not by fighting her way out. That wouldn't work with monsters. The morning, drowsy and anxious, I spent brushing down Featherstorm. He was a big, friendly lion bird and needed attention. It helped a little. Caden hadn't been able to do it since he was off talking to Silverlane's men about his reasons for being here. I wasn't sure how long he'd stay either. He had his own clan to worry about, and couldn't keep an eye on me forever. "Hey, miss?" I startled, dropping the brush as I flailed. "What?" I said, blinking at the man who'd come up behind me. "Heard you were looking for someone. Saw you little, thought maybe..." He trailed off, his eyes roving over me uncomfortably. "She didn't say her name was Erwin or nothing, but she had hair like yours, fair skin, and turned head she did. A right looker. Took to working under Candom, the tailor, as one of his spinners." He shrugged and flashed me a grin. "Don't know if she's still about, but thought I'd say." Thank you. It was a lead. A real lead. Thank you." "Maybe I can show you them. Candom shop's not far." I nodded, pushing myself up and brushing myself off. My stomach churned awkwardly. What would I say when I saw her? What would I do? I wanted to hug her. I wanted to slap her. "Lead the way." Most of all, I wanted to tell her I wasn't going to lose her again. Ever. And she was coming back with me behind the wall when it was built. As I stepped up to follow, the leaves started rustling, and Featherstorm let out an odd warble, standing up and walking beside me. The man backed away. "The beast won't hurt me? Can you call it off?" "Featherstorm?" I asked confusedly. "He won't hurt you, shouldn't. Featherstorm?" Featherstorm interposed himself between me and the man, and let out a short keening sound. His eyes weren't on the man though, they were staring at me, like I was an idiot. Blinking tiredly, I looked back at the man who I didn't know, who had offered to lead me somewhere, and was acting very nervously. Though to be fair, he was facing down a large predator with no weapons or armor. "Oh," I said, slapping my cheeks to wake myself up. "Stupid. Thank you, sir, but I don't think I'll be going with you." Featherstorm let out a snort. I wanted to find Mama now, but I could wait till Caden was back and not run off with a strange man. Though really, I'd done that by leaving with Caden, even if he was a male dwarf and not a man, depending on the definitions one was using. "That's alright, miss. Just wanted to help is all." He chuckled weakly, then turned and marched away at a brisk pace. As he left, I turned to the protective griffin, putting my hands on my hips and meeting his stare. "I'm not helpless, you know. Thank you for the reminder not to be dumb, but if you tried something..." Before I could properly process what was happening, I was knocked back onto my bum. The sudden shove Featherstorm had given me toppling me over despite my flailing attempts to stay upright. I blinked slowly up at the snorting griffin. I was way too sleepy. "You know what? You're right. Thank you. I could have gotten into trouble. As soon as Caden got back from talking with Silver Lane's men, we headed back into town to find Camden's tailoring shop, under the assumption the man might not have been lying. The store itself certainly existed, located on the main town square and in a fairly large building. Large bay windows gave a good look on the fabric and clothing-filled front room. Even a pair of full-sized wicker mannequins that were showing off a typical Ghanaian suit and ball gown. Caden pushed the door open and stepped inside, the bell ringing as he led the way. "I'm afraid we're too busy to take new orders," a woman called out from the counter, where she was carefully embroidering the hem of a dress. "Master Thames won't be free for a month at the soonest." "We're nae here for business, just a question or two." The woman looked up, her eyes widening as she saw Caden. Ah. For a moment she scowled. "Well, alright," asked then, "but mind I've got work to be doing." "I'm looking for my mother. Her name's Erwin—" "Never heard of her," she said abruptly, shaking her head. "But a man said he'd seen someone who looked like me come here under the name Elizabeth. I've wanted to find her for years, and I only recently got the chance. Peerwood was my best lead." Caden hummed, looking around the store. He was leaving it to me and only staying as support. The woman didn't look up from her work, the only sounds the clacking of a loom in the back and the shifting of fabric in her hands. After more than a minute, she sighed. "Fine." She looked up, glowering at me. "There was an Elizabeth. Rosewater was her last name. She was brown-haired, like you, I suppose. Master Harold had her work as a spinner, which she was decent at. I remember she also spent a good bit of time taking care of his garden for extra coin. Of course she was pretty, so she got Master Toddlin's eye, and he picked her to take with him when he went off to set up his own. I'd been courting him for years, and some trollop comes into town one day all weepy and broken and preys on my husband's to be his generosity." She stood up, huffing. "Well, if she's some bitch who had a kid before ensnaring a good man—" "Marissa, shut it. My grandson never liked you." An old man walked out of the back, the sound of the loom gone silent. His gaze was intense as it ran up and down over me. "So, you're looking for little Liz, are you?" He scoffed. "Always did wonder what she was running from. Got her hair, that's for sure. Never did tell me her real name, but I heard her crying about her lost kid enough to know something had happened." I opened my mouth, but he put up a hand. "I don't care for your life story, nor hers. That's my Todd's business if anyone's. Lad went off when I heard an old friend of mine passed and his workshop was empty, and took her with him since he needed staff. Somewhere down in Northgate. Was a year ago." "Less than a year, only about 9 months ago," Marissa said mulously. "Scarlet bitch." "Shut it," he snapped at her. "Girl weren't up for courting and Todd was just being kind, like me daughter raised him to be. Fact is he'd have stayed if you hadn't picked that fight. Get over it, girl. You're good, but it can be a right pain." Marissa grimaced, shooting me another glare, but sat back down and returned to her embroidery, picking at the hem angrily, yet still with the practice of dozens of years. "You got your answers. I've got an order for a ball to finish. Need to weave a whole suit's worth of peercloth for the month out. So get lost." He shooed at me. "Thank you," I said. It was much better than what I'd known when I started. So much better. Northgate wasn't a small region, but it wasn't impossible to search, especially if I knew to look for a tailoring shop. What's your grandson's last name, Master Thames?" I asked politely. "Toddlin Team," he said shortly, then waved a hand dismissively at me. "Now get out." I bowed and thanked him again and made my way outside. I could find her. I could find her! It was only a matter of time, not luck now. We were walking back to Featherstone when Caden stopped, turning to look at me. "Well, lass, you've got your next destination, but I think this is where we part ways. I've been away from me clan long enough, and I didn't think I should be heading back south again." "Oh," I nearly stumbled on the road, tipping over the cobblestones as I heard what he said. I'd hoped. But no, that wasn't fair to him. He'd taken time out to help me, to help the people of Turin's clearing, to ferry me far and wide, and the entire reason for this journey was going to end up being for naught anyway. I swallowed heavily, an uncomfortable lump in my throat at the thought of being parted with my friends, Griffin and Ryder both. Thank you, Caden, for bringing me this far. I'll always remember you in Featherstone. Aye, he grinned at me. I didn't think it's been a waste. I learned some things, found likewise souls to us Wildhammer out here. Featherstone likes you, lass. Not just when you give him treats or tickle his vanity. He likes you for being you. That's a rare thing. He deserves to say goodbye too. Tears pricked at my eyes as we got back to Featherstone, running my hand through his feathers and scratching his eye ridges just how he'd liked. I wouldn't be seeing him again, would I? This was goodbye. I'd left my bags here, and with them, I rummaged around and pulled it out, the letter I'd written. Caden, this... The lump was only getting bigger, making it harder to talk. When I was younger, I went to a great tree. Do you know Saridane, the massive tree in the northeast of the hinterlands? It wasn't on any maps, it wasn't depicted anywhere that I knew of, in books or art or anything, but I knew it existed. No, not by that name, he said slowly. And it's more to the north, in Tyr's Range. The elves at the lodge call it Kelfan, the High Tree. When I was younger, I went to a tree like it, Teldoran, the Wild Home, planted in ages past by the keeper Freya. I was babbling. I was saying things I wasn't supposed to say, but I had to say them. A child of Ganir itself, but that's not important. I shook my head wildly. What's important is that I was given visions. I know things I can't explain properly, like all the dwarf clans of Casmodan, or I suppose Lordaeron as well now, came from one place, Alderman. Some of your ancestors' brothers and sisters still sleep there. Caden simply stared at me, not saying a word, and Featherstone perked up curiously to stare at me too. That's the past. What's important is the future. It wasn't relevant at all, probably, just making me sound more crazy. I held out the letter. This is for Falstad. The first war ended with the sack of Stormwind. The second war ended with the second closing of the Dark Portal. The third won't end until Lordaeron is in flames, half of humanity are the Walking Dead, and Kelt the Last has burned. The enemy gone 10,000 years returns again. He stayed silent, and my nerves retched up. Had I gone too far? It sounded insane. It was insane. But this was the world I lived in now. I squeezed my eyes shut. I couldn't take him staring at me. Lass, I dinna, Caden said, but trailed off as the wind howled and the tree shook with the force of it. For another brief moment there was quiet. Then his hand landed on my arm, squeezing it. Lass, I canna say I know if what you be saying is right, but I think you be telling the truth as you can it. I'll see if Falstad sees it. Can you say how long we have? I shook my head. My eyes squeezed shut as I started to weep. 6 years? 3? I don't know. I just don't... He was listening. He believed me. Or close enough to believe to at least give me the time of day. A thump of Caden's fist hitting his chest startled me. If you ever make your way to Airy Peak, you'll find the hospitality of Clan Kindfeather open to you, lass. I pray you be wrong, but I cannot take the chance. Winds guide you home after your journey. Winds guide you too, both of you, I said, smiling despite my tears. For a moment the rustling leaves sounded like laughter. They always do, lass, they always do. Soon, with my letter tucked away in his saddlebag, Caden mounted Featherstone and spurred him to flight. With one last screeching farewell, he turned away, leaving me behind.